So welcome everyone to Touch, Feeling, Reading, Poetry Reading. My name is Greg Newton of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division. My partner is...
I'm Donnie Jokum.
And we are the co-founders of the Bureau, which we founded in 2012, and we've been hosted since 2014 by the LGBT Community Center, which is still closed. So we are just operating virtually, doing virtual events like this, and we launched an online store. So please check that out. I'll put a link in for Muriel's book, which is 25% off until the end of today. So we hope you'll purchase a copy of that from us. As far as housekeeping goes, I think, what do I need to say? I guess nothing. It's a poetry reading. Sit back and enjoy.
Yes.
This is being recorded and we'll post it on YouTube afterwards. So if you know anyone who missed it, they can check it out there on our YouTube channel. And I'll also put a link to that in the chat. So I'm going to introduce Muriel and then we will get started with this reading and she'll be introducing the other poets. So, pull up the bio. Muriel Leung is the author of Imagine Us, The Swarm from Nightboat Books, and Bone Confetti, winner of the 2015 Nomi Press Book Award. She is the poetry co-editor of Apogee Journal. She also co-hosts the Blood Jet Writing Hour podcast with Rachel Cruz and MT Vallarta. She is a member of Mireza Collective, a feminist speakers bureau, and Andrew W. Mellon Humanities in a Digital World Fellow. She is completing her PhD in creative writing and literature at the University of Southern California. She is from Queens, New York. Please give a warm visual welcome to Muriel.
Thank you, everyone. Hello. Welcome to Touch, Feeling, Reading. Really excited to be here today and to share space with all the wonderful writers who I'm about to introduce you to in just a little bit. Firstly, thank you to the Bureau of General Services Queer Division for hosting this event tonight. The organizers of the Bureau do this work as a labor of love, so it means so much if folks could make a suggested donation of $5 or more to the Bureau tonight to help them keep doing the good work they're doing. I've included a link in the chat for you to make that donation if you feel so inclined. And also thank you to Poets and Writers for sponsoring this event and their continued support of events like this during this time. Thank you also to the friends and performers who have agreed to be here with me today, Joey De Jesus, Catalina Young, Ika Sadaga, and Christina Olivarez. Unfortunately, Soretta Morgan cannot be here with us tonight, but she sends her love and spirit and will definitely miss what she has to contribute to this evening. For those of you who like live captioning, that is available to you either automatically or if you can click the CC button on the bottom of your Zoom screen to say show subtitles, that will be available to you. So the idea for this reading comes from a deep reflection about this past year, where we have each endured throughout this pandemic and the ways in which the pandemic has altered our relationship to touch, the intimate interaction between bodies, our sociality, our sense of the erotic, and our individual and collective vulnerabilities against the violent mechanisms of late capitalism. During the pandemic, my book, Imagine Us, a Swarm, launches in the midst of this rise of anti-Asian attacks, the rampant racism and xenophobia against Asians that became especially charged when one former president declared COVID-19 to be the China virus. And people have asked me how this book manages to be so timely, and I often reply that this book was 5 years in the making. And the devastating thing is that history rears its head even still, and the impact of this pandemic has only further exposed what has already been persistent throughout this time. Needless to say, this book is arriving into the world at a time where we are weary, exhausted, and wary of connection. I return to Audre Lorde's uses of the erotic during this time, writing which argues that the erotic has profound political potential. Revisiting her words, I'm invited to think about how, alongside this grief and uncertainty, we have and can imagine touch to be a kind of yearning, a reaching for a future in which every joy and liberation is possible. I invited the readers here today to honor this yearning with me, each of them in pursuit of the erotic in their own work, in conversation with Lorde's teachings and thinking in some way. With all this said, I'm excited to introduce our readers today and to create a platform for them to showcase their work. The first reader for this evening, Christina Olivarez, is someone I credit this most recent return to Lorde's essay, and whose writing and art inspires this consideration of the political and the intimate. Christina Olivarez is the author of the books of poetry No Map of the Earth Includes Stars, winner of the 2014 Marsh Hawk Press Book Prize, and Ungovernable, forthcoming from Yes Yes Books. Olivarez is a queer American Cuban from the Bronx. She believes in the abolition of poverty and of the carceral state, and in the radical project of imagining our liberation. She works as an educator. Please welcome Christina.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you each tonight. Muriel, thank you for bringing us together. And thank you for the thoughtful wonder that is your book, Imagine Us, the Swarm, which we are gathered here tonight to celebrate. I am so glad for your voice, your making, your feeling, and your thinking. Lorde built her history as she lived it. She audio recorded her classes. She kept drafts upon drafts of her essays, her books, her novels in progress. She journaled consistently from her teenage years until her passage, and kept all 50 plus of those journals. And in this way, our digital gathering and our ability to record it fits right in line with Lorde's practice of archive and intentionally keeping archive. Although this particular technology was not built when she was building her own. The message I absorb from this practice of hers is that we are not only worth learning from and being in relation to, but responsible for insisting upon our worth and practicing that worth in relation to one another. In that way and in that spirit, I am also very glad to be in relation to you each tonight and in community. Muriel has asked us to each read a resonant passage from Lorde's work that communicates with what we perform or share or read tonight. And so I'm going to read a bit from the essay, The Uses of the Erotic, and it starts here. Another important way in which the erotic connection functions is the open and fearless underlining of my capacity for joy. In the way my body stretches to music and opens in response, hearkening to its deepest rhythms, so every level upon which I sense also opens to the erotically satisfying experience, whether it is dancing, building a bookcase, writing a poem, examining an idea. That self-connection shared is a measure of the joy which I know myself to be capable of feeling, a reminder of my capacity for feeling. And that deep and irreplaceable knowledge of my capacity for joy comes to demand from all of my life that it be lived within the knowledge that such satisfaction is possible. The work I'll share with you tonight is erotic in a procedural sense. The making of it was and is an exercise in the erotic. During the first year of the pandemic, I did not know if I would live through the pandemic. I believe deeply that I would not, for reasons that are both common in a pandemic and also specific to me. That not knowing held me captive in certain ways and freed me in others. It freed me most pleasurably in relation to this work I make and edited since March of 2020, all of which is new. Okay, here we go. In month 5, a fish leaps into my chest. Feral in the apartment, I am dizzied by WAP, her tongue and her thigh, lush color, candy land of women desiring themselves. I draw baths between Zooms, haven't worn underwear since winter faded, haven't drunk out of a cup in almost that long. I don't even slice the fish heads off anymore. Roast them until the skin is almost hard, fish lightly veined, eat off the knife I used to carve, standing above the stove. I built a new altar with sticks, fresh period blood and orange rinds, a cup of water or milk to spit in. On the wind, I hear my kin rearrange, take notice of this new prayer. Offer me your pettiest gods, claim me, teach me, slice off my old life that has prepared me so badly for being this close to the end. I'm done with restraint and goodness and hope. Give me chaos and heat and hunger and total complaint. Return me to my animal self, who is the only one of me that might survive this. They comply, and all I want is sex. Petty gods do, in fact, I guess, like fucking. Petty gods like revenge, and it doesn't matter if it's justified. Suddenly my apartment is full of them, crouched at each entranceway, watching me, watching past me, cracking the dead plant branches, disappearing the books that are too pretty to not be full of lies. We watch TV together. I pray harder. They bring me my best cloth, dreamless sleep, hot stars. They try to return to me the breath that the virus stole. They dress me in water and foam. They dress me in my own marrow. I crave breaking and what comes after breaking, change and disaster, to find the body's limit and pull her pleasure forward. I daydream about tattooing my leg in that fish with a head. The fish leaps right into my chest. I understand absolutely nothing. In the place of my understanding is a machine, digital hands I can't feel, absorbing and re-remembering a future self. We are living in the future, and the future is fucked up. Month 3. I feel like we're being hunted. The city is smoked with loss. I still carry a ghost in my body, a sharp pain that cuts through my chest front to back when I walk. At first, I couldn't walk the 28 steps across the length of my apartment without sitting down on the floor. Nobody wants the residue of a trauma in them forever, Natasha says tonight in a voice note. I woke up to some reality where Georgia hair salons have opened and there's no immigration. Ricky's voice note says, the body tethers itself. It does. Free as any real free thing is free, Aracelis wrote. I send my grandmother Danielle Steele novels in Spanish to keep her ass inside. She confesses her neighbor down the hall is coughing and can't get out of bed. Her building is basically a tinderbox of the stubborn and elderly. She says, todo va a estar bien. I say, knowing my chest is not healed enough, I will bike to you on Saturday to sit in the hallway. Nothing matters more than your face at the door. These next few poems are poems I edited in the pandemic but wrote prior. And that experience was an interesting one. I felt like I was reaching into a different life with a different set of rules. But it's what happened. Uptown Summers, Zuhitsu, 2017 to 2014. Lexington and 103rd. I sit carefully in the lap of a person I love. T walks over, touches my arm as she laughs through a story. The sun pushes all of the color into her eyes. Sumptuous, ours, this place, what we make of and in it. Time unfolds in negative, gives us back ourselves. To think I almost didn't come today because I couldn't figure out what to wear. Cookout smoke unspools above the parking lot and joyful squalls. Sunlight slants off the windows. Buildings turn riotous, hold shine as if built for only this, orange and then darkly purple fired. Our squeaky folding chair burying us and burying us. I'm sorry for all of I live in the Bronx and there's, it's a day when the people want to ride their cars loud. So that's what we've got. That's the soundtrack. Across town, fire sheets the southeast corner of 125th and Lenox in thin ghosts, waves twice as high as a squat row of splintered buildings. Smoke breaks on our throats, pours thickly into the mouth of the subway. A block full of live ash, suspended in the air and in us. I'm beside 2 older men, marveling from an unsafe distance. Traces settle on our faces. A lone NYPD loops long circles on the far street. No fire trucks. In a different story, I'd write, evenly they coiled the yellow hose. Evenly they doused the fire. At home, I don't wash my hair right away. If I hold it on my body, it happened. Earlier in winter, licking batter off a spoon, I saw an empty building catch fire, its top floor windows exploding in tight pops over 123rd. The trucks did come, lighting the street unearthly. Disasters verify what we're taught or try to forget. Lowly, everything is always singing an ending song. It's midnight, a different year, and we're home early. Girls rolling and climbing, limb over wet limb, into a tiny shower on the 13th floor. Only the projects in this city have a 13th floor. Tomorrow it'll be early morning, and the light pouring over the river will wake us up. Pancakes and chicken for breakfast and the red-walled kitchen. For now, we fit our bodies into one long bed to sleep. In the afternoon, we'll duct saran wrap to the linoleum, pour dish soap and a long, thin ribbon from hallway to the edge of the living room, swish water with our bare hands and feet, and have a proper slip and slide. Your eyes will go dark on my body, and maybe you're still high. Feel salt sharp rise at this tease. Girls being free when nothing is. Spread my fingers across one friend's collarbone, her shoulder blades. Another brushes the kinks and sorrow out of our wet hair. Death is everywhere. We turn each other's secrets over in awe. How dare we? We are the clean, dry spaces and fog, a painfully concentrated safety of bodies breathing deeply on either side. We lose our loves, are gentrified out. We dance, here, a queer child dressed top to toe in black, adorned in lilac butterfly wings. A brown boy gone rogue and shimmer, threading us, circling and circling the round bar in the circle of no parking's dance floor. We win, insistent, fucking alive. We drank of this dirt we are. We choose to love the dirt we are. We drank of our sound that rings between us, glints of light we make and hold, fixed like stars in our breath, fixed like fruit in our limbs, found that this living, when survived, is for joy. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Christina. I think one of the questions that came up for so many writers during this past year was just how do you write this moment in time when so much is rapidly happening, and I love what you're able to conjure about survival during this time, and I'm glad that you're here. The next reader is my dear friend, Aika Sadagat, whose work bravely and constantly returns to the sensual, the body as personal and as politic, each turn so unflappable. Aika Sadagat is a poet and essayist immersed in textual impact, pleasure, play, and question marks. She's published in Apogee Journal, Nightboat Books, and Tayo Literary Magazine. Currently, Aika is a Truman Capote Fellow and MFA candidate at Cal Arts, where they co-created the Hyperlink Reading Series in the Creative Writing Program. Aika received her BA at the New School, studying literature, psychology, race and ethnicity, and gender studies. A former youth counselor, they performed and or instructed at the Philippine Center, the New School, Studio Museum 127, Princeton University, Brooklyn Museum, and more. Before and beyond that, Aika surfs. Please welcome Aika.
Thank you, Muriel. Hello, everyone. So happy and so special and blessed and grateful to be in this space together and to join this beautiful lineup. And congratulations, Muriel. You know, I'm going to keep saying that to you every day for everything you've done, which includes a beautiful book. So I'm going to read this passage from Uses of the Erotic. If you have, unfortunately, I don't have the copy to pull up. So if you have this copy, we have similar pagination. I'm reading from page 54. The erotic is a measure between the beginnings of our sense of self and the chaos of our strongest feelings. It is an internal sense of satisfaction to which, once we have experienced it, we know we can aspire. For having experienced the fullness of this depth of feeling and recognizing its power, In honor and self-respect, we can require no less of ourselves. It is never easy to demand the most from ourselves, from our lives, from our work. To encourage excellence is to go beyond the encouraged mediocrity of our society, is to encourage excellence. But giving in to the fear of feeling and working to capacity is a luxury only the unintentional can afford. And the unintentional are those who do not wish to guide their own destinies. This internal requirement toward excellence, which we learn from the erotic, must not be misconstrued as demanding the impossible from ourselves, nor from others. Such a demand incapacitates everyone in the process. For the erotic is not a question only of what we do. It is a question of how acutely and fully we can feel in the doing. I picked that because I may not always know what I'm doing, let alone writing. But thankfully, I know how and what I'm feeling. So the pieces that I'm sharing with y'all are absolutely works in progress, and in which I leaned into the strongest, sometimes perceived chaotic feel of the feelings. So there's a long one, a short one, and a little surprise and gift for Muriel. This first one is, for now, entitled, Wherein I Become Fine. Okay. Wherein I, a brass bucket of dread, desequester a blue butterfly, the propulsive tongue becoming its own mouth, mine, wherein a wolf could eat me one day and I don't know, I would be fine, okay. Wherein the flesh becomes skin, becomes me, becomes flesh, becomes me skin, wherein I text you, what you doing, honeydew, my ube yam, wherein you text me not much, just chillin' you when I know you not, just chillin', wherein I am, wherein I still baked a cake for two being you, wherein I still saved a really big piece for me still, wherein the dupe deludes a deluge and honeydew ate the bear, wherein I guess I exist, the wolf wearing a whale, becoming urgent wailing, beckons, wherein my overture and rumpus overcome any noise of self-loathing with which we, fecund, could have. But we really didn't. Not yet. So we still, not much, just chillin', wherein the me skin becomes flesh, becomes me, becoming, the forgetting, fist and grip in every fucking blow that forgot about me, wherein I still forget about them, and remember both and the forgotten, wherein I'm still remembering you. And I am still remembering me still, wherein I listen and you listen to my every diction of escape and deliverance, and stroke my every umbra, arriving wherein I just want you, wherein I just want me, wherein I just want you and I just want me still, and I would like and I would want what I want, and I could like what I want, and what I want I could love, wherein I want what I could love, wherein I think you could, blue and butterfly too, wherein you not yet didn't, and you won't. So I haven't, not yet, I don't, wherein I can't and I still did, and we will. Wherein I am both anding my way through the deluge distill that deludes any dupe or dread, any suffering from any chrysalis or trauma or pain is not the only thing that determines my present, me skinned, wherein the present determines what is next. Historicity? Healing? But cannot yet determine what's now. Urgent, so becoming becomes a mare, becomes a whale, again, wherein again the whale, unbeknownst, becomes beknown, beckoning, howling to itself, I am okay, to me, wherein becoming becomes a wishful wish, a swish, wherein I choose to look at the horizon with my eyes, now, becoming the sun, wherein the sun becomes my eyes now, looking back at me, looking at you, the sea. The sea, my God, the sea, my urgent becoming and urgent becoming becomes a blue, blue whale again, and the blue whale again, becoming itself a wolf, the knowing wearing the known, the propulsive tongue, wherein I still stutter over my stammer with no more struggle, wherein I still sense your sense pulsing, sense my pulse, wherein my sense pulses upon your swollen, swelling me still, the flesh, in my skin, a hot current, seeking every infinite electric swell. Pillow talk. The soothing terror of skin pleasures isn't always for morning. After we convalesce, we could find ourselves alone, humming in near darkness. Isn't relief what you asked for, Praline? A mad girl lullaby, a little soliloquy? Last night I dreamt of your siren, and today a little bird song. When we wake, we can pause the second arms that ticks the clock, then dive into the undercurrent once more, and bathe in the syllables of your name. Succumb to this elogium, darling evergreen, before our rot and rue. And before I read this last one, I just want to say thank you again, also to all the friends and intimates and beloveds and cuties who are here. It's always just so sweet to be in your presence, however. And Muriel, again, congratulations. I love you. This is to you. 25th May, 2021. Dear friend, I am thinking of you today as the swarm, swarming every entity that has bruised you maliciously, swarming with your incessant bellow of a laugh and soothe every horror that I love. I am thinking of you as the toe, swarming the sharks who know nothing as much but to feast on the seals who too feast on the fish, and you still swarming every whirl with your ellipses and essay and syntactic current in memory in which they pray and pray and pray and pray. I am sure, I pray. I am thinking of you, and I am thinking of you, and I am thinking of you. Swarmed by all of us, unceasingly reminding you, you very well know, the hum, the cry sting inside is a swarm against another swarm, against the other swarm, for your warming, worn bodies of elegant and unforgiving bones. 2. I marvel at the noises a more perfect vengeance makes, and I marvel at the noises a more perfect vengeance makes too. The past year has been so difficult for me, and us, and them, and us, and all of us with them. It was difficult, and it is difficult. Though difficulty may seem like our genesis, it is just an exodus because exit wounds can permit an exit for us. You wrote, how do you tell a cauterized wound not to confront the harming body? I remember everything and after nothing in between. Does my fury also receive its right to dream? The systems in which I place my whole life shudder against my waking. And I write, how do you tell a memory not to remember the confronting body? I cauterize everything after the before and wrap the wounds between the nothing. Does your fury also receive its right to dream? The systems in which you place our whole life wake against the shudder. Every morning I wake up and echo your question, where will our fury go? And I put my answer into my breath. Sometimes for fuck you, sometimes to fuck off, and sometimes to fuck, sometimes to love, oftentimes. I am left waking as a ghost, and so you write, a ghost is still a ghost, even when it finds its everlasting body. And is that so bad to be a spirit, to be freed of this embodied history? And so you invoke the vengeance outliving me, the vengeance a persistent song. I can go on, I have this gift of time. From the caverns of the war, I wait. From the caverns of a remembrance of a suture, of an attempt, of a war, we wait. When I imagine all the possibilities of the swarm, I imagine all of the possibilities of the swarm, and we wait until we don't. No more waiting, no more supposing, speculate, supposition into the break, the broken imagination into doing. What is metaphorical about tenderness and touch? No, friend, I suppose I can still suppose more than what we dream, uphold the swarm, swarming, yes, swarming and swarming, yes, friend. I suppose we can still suppose for the more than more. I am holding you today in your provocation. How many more moons? I asked. They answered and I supplied. How many more skies? I ask you now. And you always answer, so we will try. Yours, Aika. Thanks. Thank you. Love you, Muriel.
Well, with that summation of my book, thank you all for coming. I'm just kidding. It's cancer season. Aika must have heard my subliminal cry for her love poems, and so she gifted me one. So thank you so much for that and everything you shared. Very lucky to call you friend. Next reader for today is Catalina Young, an artist and writer who I had the great fortune of meeting in collaboration once upon a time, and whose stunningly bold work takes on the violence of institutions, the violence of white men, and in each turn revealing a resiliency that feels like a purification through fire. Catalina Young engages object making, interdisciplinary environments, time-based projects, and relational works to examine themes of desire, subjugation, and dissidence. Young's practice is an act of searching through myth, through literature, and through histories, both oral and visual, to indicate counter-narratives around representation and self-definition. Young's uses of organic, inorganic, and conceptual materials are simultaneously poetic, apocalyptic, primordial, and abject. Young will have solo exhibition at No Place Gallery 2021, followed by their second solo exhibition with Lyles and King in September. And other solo exhibitions include Real Art Ways in Hartford, US, Knockdown Center, Queens, US, Make Room, Los Angeles, and Rubber Factory in New York. Young's work has been included in group exhibitions at Sculpture Center, curated by Catherine Simone Reynolds, Nicodem, Los Angeles, Francois Gabali in Los Angeles, curated by Kelly Akashi, Brick in Brooklyn, Helena and Rather in New York, and many more. Young is currently a 2021 studio artist in residence at Smack Mellon in Brooklyn. And Young received an MFA from Yale University in 2019. They are represented by Lyles and King, New York, and Make Room in Los Angeles. Please welcome Catalina.
Thank you, Muriel, for making your way through that mouthful of bio. And congratulations. I am so happy to see you, Muriel, and a lot of new faces. And I'm so flattered that you invited me to share some words on my face this evening. So I'm going to read some words from Lorde from the same book, Sister Outsider, but a different essay, The Transformation of Silence into Language and Action. What are the words you do not yet have? What do you need to say? What are the tyrannies you swallow day by day and attempt to make your own until you will sicken and die of them, still in silence? In the case of silence, each of us draws the face of her own fear, fear of contempt, of censure, or some judgment or recognition, or challenge or annihilation. But most of all, I think we fear the visibility without which we cannot truly live. That visibility which makes us most vulnerable is that which is also the source of our greatest strength. So I sort of agonized about what to present for today, because I was like, gosh, like I haven't written a poem since last year. And before that, I hadn't really written anything since like 2015. And I feel like some performances in the works, but they're not ready. And then, I was like thinking about this quote from Lorde, and, it's like, what are the words you don't have yet in my mind is like all of them, but I have been writing these like elaborate Instagram captions for like several years. And I think like when I stopped like writing essays and poetry in earnest, that kind of became like my way of not just like sort of supplying like text in tandem to or separately from my visual practice, but also a kind of way like as like an introverted like antisocial person, really to like interface in its own like intimate way with like people in my life or not in my life. So what I'm going to do today, thankfully for an audience that mostly does not already follow me on Instagram, is go through a selection of captions I've written over the last 2 years on Instagram. And I'm going to have the corresponding image from each post as my background. With me as the abstraction, the intimate interface. And if you want to see the full image, I guess you'll have to go to my website or something. So this is from October 2nd, 2019. This piece is called Evil. In 1910, Sabine Spielrein looked in a mirror during the night and saw a wolf. What is it that you want? She asked it. When you see a ghost, you must speak to it. Inside many a diasporic body, there is a self-hating bitch who, forcefully bred and raped into deformity, refuses to abandon the cajoling hand of their master. But it is never too late to reconcile with what is monstrous in you, your own demon, as Rochester referred with agony to Antoinette Causeway. You are not crazy. The harrowing thing that you sense chasing you, laughing at you, is in fact within you. You can always shapeshift again. You just have to ask the ghost what it wants. Okay, this is from November 7th, 2019. This piece is called Last Laugh. It was not until months into its making, coming out of a battered place in the gut, that I recognized as one genesis point of this work, Jean Rhys's doomed spectral heroines, all listless violation and fiery egress. I had begun work on this pairing of imagery and text in the thick of an enervating yet unspectacular emotional unraveling, leaving me yet again at a loss for words. 4 years out from first abandoning my writing practice, I was hung up on stones, stoning, petrification, fear, punishment, silence, conditions of being interrupted, arrested, left somehow without, and concurrently, Sisu and the Spectre's calls for the creation of ecstatic and liberatory languages. What could be salvaged from their words of breathless, flawed conviction? I forced myself to write, and though it felt like a final gasp, I dimly recognized it as a beginning. Recalling Rhys and her elliptical storytelling, the weight carried in gaps and blackouts, I stitched together this fractured piece of a monologue delivered with the help of 2 friends I am still getting to know. From March 2nd, 2020. Okay, I started the project Conclusion and Findings in August 2017, 2 years after I was raped, 1 year after I received a verdict exonerating my ex-lover and rapist, and just weeks before #MeToo blew up. I had no idea that it would. The timing felt weird to me, but the project felt urgent. Looking back, there are so many things I would have done differently. I would not have reported to the carceral channels that I did, and honestly had not planned to until weirdly pressured to at the hospital. But I recognized that I acted according to the ways that I had learned at the time to be a feminist and a woman, to identifiers that I no longer embrace. And I did what I felt like I had to in order to be okay with myself later. This is all not really the point. Fast forward 2 more years to last night, my opening, surrounded by love and friends old and new. This work in this forum is definitely not about #MeToo, and it isn't really about rape. Maybe it isn't even about violence or abuse. The exhibition title, "It Has Always Been the Perfect Instrument," is excerpted from Antonio de Nebrija's 1492 introduction to Castilian grammar, which he wrote to illuminate to Isabella de Castile the importance of language in consolidating empire. I have been thinking and feeling my way through wide structures and deep heartbreak. Over the last several years, my work has felt increasingly emptied of the capacity to speak, which is not to say that this capacity will never return, but that for the time being, what I can do is love a cast off or not yet made thing into improbable form through lonely force of will and fractured conviction. For this Taurus sun and Leo rising, the only way out is through. This is from April 2nd, 2020. This piece is titled Font 4. I made the first font in 2016 when my secular and self-harming ass was looking for something to believe in. I did a lot of scream crying and drunk driving that year. Everything wet. I felt like I never came up for air. Did I literally think that holy water has some kind of sacred healing power? No, or who knows? But I liked the idea that people could believe in it enough to make a ritual out of it. I had never witnessed a church service, temple service, anything. I still don't know what prayer entails. But I know how yearning takes physical form and how heartache, shovel-shaped, tunnels vital passageways into being. Each time I burrow my way into love, I only narrowly stop myself from digging straight through my lover's body. A vessel is a tunnel that is begun and mercifully left alone to rest. Fill all my holes, please, begs Charlotte Gainsbourg, nymphomaniac of her lovers. I have wandered through my 20s with all my face holes feeling utterly stuffed. All this time, I could neither listen nor speak. What was growing and dying in my vessels? What viscous feeling ready to explode? On April 14th, 2020, this is Font 4 again, also with its partner, Font 5. Dorothea Tanning wrote in the 80s of feeling sorry for lost dogs, for all dogs, elegant broken legs of horses, elephants that die assassinated in the savannah, swarmed by flies, for a fish out of water, flopping. Ah, don't look. Animality, our animality, and what to make of it, the crude humiliation and shameful abandon. At the most dire, I did not feel animal or thing, but my eyes were ringed with white, livid. I frothed. Open your mouth means different things from different people. Entreatment to speak, invitation to submit. Some whole in a stunning betrayal, sloshing wet at its most violated. Horse hair rings like whore's hair, sisterly beasts of burden shorn to measure time and body. Casting as shadow, an umbilical line catching nothing. Terminus, detonated portal, sky. Okay, I just have one more, which is this one, from March 11th, 2021. This piece is called Devotion, and its materials are a school desk, various materials, a deconstructed Fenojing box, and graphite drawings on Bristol board of selfies that I received from my ex-lover after being raped by him. In elementary school, I spent our 45-minute reading periods masturbating single-mindedly at my desk. In a haze, I had no language for what I was doing or what I was learning in this institution meant for a different kind of learning. I could not think about anything other than my own hot euphoria. It was not a euphoria of self-love. It was confused and degrading and always led to Charlie horses. My orgasms still do to this day. My body refuses pleasure without suffering. What in my child self yearned and rubbed away so urgently for a kind of violation that was, in my young mind, the only thing that could bring the unremarkable borders of myself into focus? The portraits, I made them and never showed them and figured I would never show them until it turned out I had to, because I could not revisit my child self without laying bare her future. Making photorealistic celebrity portraits was how I self-taught as a preteen how to draw, which is how I learned to see and also to want. These renderings were the basis of my study. Everything I have ever known, learning, training, discipline, and devotion. These portraits were acts of pure devotion, not unlike the faith behind the creation of talismans and reliquaries. Where did this want eventually take me? To the violent schism that arises from the object of devotion being displaced by, or simply becoming, or perhaps having always already been the abuser, the rapist, the racist whom I loved, a son I could neither gaze directly into nor imagine being without. My last therapist horrifyingly entreated me to smash a giant foam block with a tennis racket while reciting a mantra. I half-heartedly said some angry things until I arrived at a message to my younger self. I am sorry, I am still letting you down. My therapist, directing my back then onto a wide, flat pillow to the floor with eyes closed, saying into my ear, "It is okay, you did your best, I forgive you." Thank you.
That was incredible. I think, like, first of all, that, like, I don't know, so Catalina invited me to be part of Conclusions and Findings, and I just also want to just echo how grateful I was to be part of that project, and how just like your work has been an invitation to be part of something that everything you've expressed is something that so many have us have been through, and I think that that blend of fury, rage, and like compassion for self and forgiveness are all things that we wish were part of the world. And so thank you for gifting us that. And I think about that every time I look at your work. So thank you. I'm excited to welcome next Joey De Jesus, my dear friend and co-editor at Apogee Journal, and to whom I credit much of my early education in poetry. I remain constantly inspired by the ways in which their poetic spirit moves through every performance and their political engagement, particularly their recent run for New York State Assembly, for which I remain so, so proud, and it isn't over yet. Joey De Jesus is the author of Hoax from the Operating System in 2021. We animate the dream, a poet's run for public office, from Mount Analog Political Pamphlets Series 2, 2021. Knocked the Threshold of Madness from the Atlas Review 2019, and co-author alongside Shade Lene of Writing Voice into the Archive, Volume 1, edited by Jennifer Tamayo with support from UC Berkeley's Center for Race and Gender. Joey received the MFA in poetry from Sarah Lawrence College and a departmental fellowship to complete their MA in performance studies from New York University. They received the 2019-2020 Brick Art FP Project Room Commission in 2017, NIFA and NISCA Fellowship in Poetry for Hoax. Poems that appeared in Poem Day, Artist Space, Barrow Street, Bettering American Poetry, the Brooklyn Rail, Brooklyn Magazine, the New Museum, and elsewhere. Joey is a co-editor at Apogee Journal and sits on the advisory board of No Dear Magazine. Joey lives in Ridgewood, where they ran for New York State Assembly. Please welcome Joey.
Hello. Please, in the chat, I've been warring with Spectrum over the internet. So please, if I start to break up, just put in the chat and I'll pause, and maybe then I'll screen share. because I have the text that I can show, but I think it might be, okay, so first I want to say thank you so much to Muriel for inviting me to participate in this evening. It has, and I, you know, I'm gonna like give a little trailer for your book because you asked for a passage, but you know, I reread your book just the other day, this past weekend, actually. And I was thinking about how your generosity and the care with which you gesture to other thinkers and other thought is so amazing. It's so radiant. Because I was, you know, it was my second read, so I'm sitting and I'm like, I'm looking and I'm like, space in the bookshelf, but I'm like, okay, so, but where does it go in the bookshelf? And it's like the book vibrates to other books, you know. I experience it's like it's an amazing experience tactile experience to have with an object, to just sort of like have it, like just to float it and be like, all right, I guess I'm just gonna squeeze it in here, and it's like right next to, you know, other recent collections from people in whom we're in community. So it's just it's an amazing feat, and I love that quality about it. It's a different kind of like reading that you don't get from, you know, like an trade industry book, you know. It gives this like vibration that I love. So I'm gonna spoiler, because, you know, I'm gonna spoil your book a little, like hope you're not reading the last poem. Because and the passage I'm going to read, and it'll make sense. The passage I want to read is also from the book. I don't know if Leo's in the room. I know you've got my Audre Lorde, Leo. I don't know if you're watching right now, or we're going to watch later. You got. I'm coming back for that. But I love you, Leo. Let me read this. This is from Poetry is Not a Luxury, and I was very lucky to recently sit in on a group workshop with the Free Black Women's Library in Brooklyn at the Red. There's like an event that's up for only a few more days in Astor Place, where we just sort of just read poetry. We read in the sun, in the heat. Poetry is Not a Luxury together, and you know, I've read this essay many times, but there are moments that have like stayed with me that I just wanted to read really quickly since that I'm just thinking about, and the prompt for this evening, it resonates. So I'm just gonna read the first maybe couple sentences. The quality of light by which we scrutinize our lives has direct bearing upon the product which we live, and upon the changes which we hope to bring about through those lives. It is within this light that we form those ideas by which we pursue our magic and make it realized. And then she says, and I'm skipping a little, for each of us as women, there's a dark place within where hidden and growing our true spirit rises, full and tough as chestnut stanchions against our nightmares of weakness and of impotence. These places of possibility within ourselves are dark because they are ancient and hidden. They have survived and grown strong through darkness. Within these dark places, each of us holds an incredible reserve of creativity and power, of unexamined and unrecorded emotion and feeling. The woman's place of power within each of us is neither white nor surface. It is dark, it is ancient, and it is deep. And so that's been kind of, you know, I'm thinking a lot about interiority and exteriority. And then this, you know, trying to disrupt or disturb this, you know, light, dark binarism, that Lorde is, it's I'm thinking about light and luxury being, etymologically rooted in light, a commodification, a literal commodification of light. And or lux. And I just wanted to read, I'm not gonna spoil the whole thing, but this is, I think, these 3 lines, I think, I want this reading, I hope my reading may speak to something that is occurring in these 3 lines tonight. Suppose there is an end to our suffering. Like a chariot, the absence of grief circles us with the obstinate heat of the largest star, to believe in the radiant orbit of this fire. And that's, of course. So I'm just gonna read a few poems, and each poem is a star. It's the title, it takes its title from the name of a star. And I think of each one as sort of, seated beneath that star. So this is Tejat, which is a star in Gemini. Upending nation virtuoso. I ride the giant crowned ibis who throbs an aria that attracts song to an area, wake to flute with warblers to decipher avian chatter while daydreaming, and learn the pitches that kiss poltergeists active. 8 birds make its burning letters in the sky. I frivol, unholy halved, downy hermit abrading alkali of suet sweet seed breath till low warbling halo fast violet sound what I thought the heart. I sing the lessons I learned by tin whistle, and in the dance I demand thunder. Oh, it's Cancer. So let me pull up the crab. I have to search this giant PDF. Okay. Aceli, which is a star in Cancer. And wait, let me see. I heard the computer heating, so I'm worried. Can you all hear me still? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, cool, okay. I hear my computer working, and I'm like, oh no, that's usually a bad sign. Aceli, an overwrought laureate of votive clauses, I downed white wine mid-apocalypse, thinking to draft my words the way a falconer launches her bird, who makes sport of ringing skylarks with broad wings that I might recognize myself in history. Workers contracted to airport runways in neon vests, wade into muck in their muck masters, to startle screeches of gulls. A crab in the latter reaches up to finally reclaim its name, that at the very least, it be held in the damned mouth right. Okay, a few more. I want to do some love poems. Namasadira is a love poem. Okay, so this is a love poem. Namasadira is a star in Sagittarius. A bright burning mantra to recite when falling into 10 feet of blue, you, the accidental heat generated of all stars in their the need for fire outweighing the wax. Bewildering strength is consensual phenomenon kept wholly in the heart. The fact does not explain the language before me, that action is the language of love. From the reading before, Transformation of Silence into Language and Action. That's directly from there. That action is the language of love. In the dream, let me see if I can. In the dream, every value I desire puts me to shame. You best the world's defenses surfing atop windcat. I glaze your syllable in silica and alloys. You mind the bias identifying with heroes speaking ineffable, if only in unbroken silence. Sweet metal effigy supplies our garden's interstice, sings hymnal into fiery humor to avert dust far off, incoming, swift increase. Okay. Shaula, a star in Scorpio for the Scorpios in the room. I'm gonna try and give, I don't know how much, I'm gonna, maybe one more. After this one, so two more. Shaula. Venus, rising orb of dusk, your toxic sparkle lifts the heat that greens the hour. Acidic sky, astral bodies that burst into infinite flash may hold overhead like a scorpion's hook, but I will never allow the weight of a whisper to anchor my robe of feathers. Mid-flight, a hawk tears into duck meat, while another pair of lovers giggles at the assonance of their names. The salt of the day caught in the hairs of their chests also settles on the tongues of birds. Hell is around the corner. Of this I am as sure as not being born twice. The flame, to go back, to be dust again. And then this last one is for Muriel. I mean, this is all for Muriel, but this last one is especially for Muriel. Sheraton, which is a star in Taurus. You know, because we're blessed. You know, I don't think it's like, yeah, I'm a Scorpio, Libra cusp, but I don't, you know, I don't like, I think a lot of the way people talk about the stars is very colonial. Having written a book where I've like partitioned this, in which I've drawn a sky map and done something that I think is also kind of colonial, but save the reads for me once the book is launched. Okay, Sheraton, which is a star in Taurus. For Muriel, especially tonight, you are the heat that outlasts its source. Relax your likeness, stream leaping leopard, which twists its ankle over distance for lack, refusing the flesh of its own, in hopes to feed another a hair hole. Sink incisors into skull song when crickets cry soot, heart thwomping threat of green dance devil in rising beauty, furnished in extraordinary skill. Move your odd tear, stork, yellow gold, iron honey. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Joey. You gave me constellation, you gave me the sky. Thank you. I'm so honored to be in community with you, with all of you today. It is such an honor. And I know this book in so many ways is about so many things, and I wanted each of the readings that are part of this tour to sort of give space to one part of the book, because there's 7 sort of constellated texts in this book, and there's one in which I've always struggled to find so long, and because it sits a little dense. But I think that alongside the readings of Audre Lorde, and given the context of where we are now, I think this feels really, and in the context of conversations we've been having tonight, I feel like this piece feels really appropriate. And this is a piece which is titled "The Plural Circuits of Tell," and it's very much a reflection of cancer, which both of my parents have had, one passed and one survived, and disease and the racialization of disease, and a reflection on how, especially this past year, we've seen race and disease conflated. At the same time, when I think about something like cancer, which is both environmental and something hereditary, I think about how the cancer cells and the gene lives within our bodies, and there's a certain intimacy to that, and how hard it is to talk about the erotic and disease and illness and disability in that way. And so I I wanted to share this tonight alongside Audre Lorde's work, herself having written the cancer journals and being, and someone who's been through cancer. I just feel like as a sort of, as a beacon for tonight, I hope that her voice can also resonate too. To tell. The project, because no one talks about remainders, I hope to draw the line from here to there, scattering in between the points a nominal feeling of what an absence looks like when dispersed. The migration of the cancer cell, otherwise known as the invader of healthier and naturally growing cells within the body. Dispersal, the distribution of animacy across a subject's once happy plane. For instance, I was happy once, my mother said, referring to the games she would play in her youth. I played those too, the elastic thread we wrapped around our ankles, torso, neck. We leapt and we hurled our bodies through this entanglement. And there's somewhere between us a severing, or metastasis, the cancerous cell in its effort to become many splits and duplicates. They are called daughter cells for that reason. Once is a type of beginning. When I was younger, I began every story with once as a way of signaling the singular arrangement of our time. But in fact, it always happens more than once. For every child wandering into the mangled course of the woods, watched by wolves, the night eventually comes again and again, and all the days after, marching into a forgetting spell. Nothing the lone surviving parent says can soothe them but the eyes' slow blink in the even slower dark. Once is also recitation, the story that would not be forgotten. In the theory of push and pull, the disproportionate histories of our political and economic intervention make it impossible for two countries to live their lives in singularity. The intimacy of such contact coalescing into a force. When people of one nation are propelled towards the other, a migratory impulse, a movement that happens more than once. My grandfather's painting of a two-story house in Guangzhou has hung above his kitchen table for as long as I can remember, and it remains there long after his death. I feel that I know this house intimately, though I have never been, and as a child I drew poor imitations of that image, which seemed like a dream inhabiting another city. When my mother returned to Hong Kong in 2007, she and I made plans to visit this house. At the restaurant where my uncle and mother had just finished their last pot of tea, my mother expressed their plans to stay several nights in Guangzhou. In response, my uncle recounted several incidents he had heard about in the news of a roaming motorcyclist in Guangzhou who would take a length of sharp wire and decapitate his victims as he rode past. Times have changed since you've lived here, he said, as a fact. In the days following, my mother paced my uncle's apartment, going, "What do we do? What do I do?" Then deciding that she wanted us to keep our heads, we never went. Such is the potency of imagination and the ways that stories spiral. In the case of the house, my mother never intended to return, only wanting to see it one last time so that I would know it through sight and touch. As for me, it was not longing I felt, but the closest thing to injury against the gauntlet of history and my uncle's mouth, his fear, his most contagious and rabid fear. What remains to tell, the writing of this story in this time, how I replicate the narrative of myself across different spaces. Today and every day after I wear a pleated mask. It was my grandmother who taught me to cut a mango, so I eat and think of her, she who has passed 1,000 times. I wear her face, I don my mother's attire, our inheritance like a distant thread that does not stop weaving. In one delicate swoop, the water of my life can fall, each splatter a new pattern I cannot escape. There was my mother's cancer, and then there was my father's. In each instance, the organ revolted, and they were sunken for a while. But the fact that my mother lives and my father died was no product of a greater cure. I began to see in each of them a cruel optimism. For Laurent Berlant, it is a condition of maintaining an attachment to a problematic object, an advance. When I was a child, my parents asked me which one of them I loved the most. I only wanted to please. To my mother, I would say, I love you most, and to my father, but I love you the most. Each parent believing that they were the recipient of the bigger love. When found out, they laughed and told the story of my cunning for years. Now I wonder what it means to believe for a moment that my love could be any less. In the face of possible death, was my father's attachment to life propelled by a determination towards the greater love? In his passing, did he believe it to be dimmer than the nearby flame? Once and several times after, I would forget myself and move through my days as if a blank slate. Then they would call me and would be another Asian woman's name. Waiting there, I would turn doe until correction, and always the apology bears a light touch of resentment. The plural of me, and yet they cannot tell me apart. Says Trinity Minha, all is empty when one is plural, yet how difficult it is to keep our mirrors clean. If the zygote is the cell that constitutes the first formation of human life, and the cancer cell is also first in its animacy. Whereas life has a certain determinism, we know exactly from where it came and where it will go. The cancer's origin and path remain unknown. At once a mystery of genetic disposition and environment, thwarts a linear story. Some number of factors can cause a cell to change, to become more of itself in the face of some unnameable loneliness. It may insist that it was not frightened when it began, but by populating the body as tissue, it had conquered its oneness. Often I remember even the things I am not supposed to remember or did not belong to me. In celebration of becoming American, my parents bought a plastic tree, and in their happiest days, the angel's top stood high on chopstick stilts, so eager were they to help the object remain upright. In this inheritance, a sign hangs over everything. You too can make it if you try. On its way to becoming cancerous, a cell first enters metaplasia, brought on by contact with an abnormal stimulus such as a chemical agent. In a metaplasia, the cell changes its internal properties to adapt to its new environment. But adaptation should not be confused with assimilation. The former transforms to bear the stresses of its surroundings. The latter attempts to perform in the likeness of its external environment's demands. Something is lost in the former exchange. The cell in mutation becomes estranged from itself and moves forward in its life as something uncomfortably other. To think of such costs, what it means to try beyond recognition. This was my father's face upon passing. The air cut in so pale, the veins shined bright green. It was almost aquatic, swimming in that blue room, where scarcely the light would enter. When he exhaled, the room filled thick as a plea. How often are our bodies begging to be relieved of us? He said no words. It was dawn. The new year came in, feverish and clean. Never had I ever seen a body work so hard at being still. Seward Park High School, the school my mother attended as a teenager shortly after immigrating to the U.S. from China, was named after William H. Seward of the Burlingame-Seward Treaty of 1868 that permitted trade between the U.S. and China. The treaty lasted for 2 years, granting ease of Chinese immigration to the U.S. However, the growing Chinese population was such a source of anxiety to those in the country that the Chinese Exclusion Act was passed to restrict Chinese immigration to the U.S. Incidentally, the high school is located along the fringes of New York City's Chinatown, walking distance to the garment shop where my mother and her sisters would work after school. When I pass by the old campus, I am reminded of the proximity between praise and fear, how a people can be lauded one year and then detested the next. They would build monuments out of this feeling. And because my father never finished high school, he thought of this another way, always going about his life with some strain. I saw him once at night, sitting by the windowsill, his cigarette in hand. I had with me a pack of cards and asked him if he wanted to play. Declining as he often did, the day's work wearing on him, he watched instead. Even in his stillness, the smoke dressed him in white. The haunted years. The briar reached around the house and made it its own. Within this new architecture, the family became a band of ghosts that glowed with virtual noise. It took so much to cancel out the grieving air that I revolted my body and became an angry race. I made myself a menace, a sharper and more unforgiving thing. I threw myself against the briar edge, and it being more cutting than I, tossed me back. This would go on for years, the one constant, to be unspectered. The body must harden against itself and rush into the bludgeoning. This is all it knows and comes to portend. As the cell enters its cancerous phases, it becomes disoriented, its loss known only to itself. The problem, upon dispersal, the body is proliferated in every direction such that it becomes a type of contagion, feared as it were by these healthier bodies that will against the idea of being touched, or in this case, contaminated. Interlude. The cancerous cell en route to becoming cancerous tissue is a long contested path, very rarely seen in its infancy. So much of what we know banks on what reveals itself in the light, the tumorous growth in the shape of a protruding lump, an organ assailing against itself, rioting. In health class, the teacher would show the film Outbreak to cover both units on hygiene and sexual education. In the film, the host species for the metabovirus, whose illegal transport to the US leads to a series of infections among humans. Beginning once as a virus passed through fluid exchange, it acclimates to its new environment and evolves into airborne virality. Confronting the proliferating state of the virus, the US government needs to decimate an entire small town in California where the disease has spread. Though it was widely agreed that the US response to the virus felt overblown, to say the least, no one anticipated that years later the film would foreshadow the spread of a disease globally that would trigger the same suspicion of foreign elements. The source of the coronavirus, assigned to an eastward origin, it wore an Asian face behind a surgical mask, both the objects of equal fear and scorn. These too can propagate. In the final test for health class, we were asked to determine how the outbreak can be applied to our own hygienic and sexual practices. In other words, it is a danger to want. Without knowing it then, we had signed a promise to say nothing of our desires. Every expression, when spoken, would be deemed immediately deviant. Identifying the problem as such, the diagnostic promise of the categories of life and death is itself in crisis. Mel Y. Chen argues that a compulsion towards life is how we stay locked in the idea of subjecthood, when the pursuit of life in opposition to death exists only as naturalized impulses. Then we preclude the instances in which a body or bodies of people actively refute both. Such are the instances of self-immolation or other death directives meant to move beyond the container of the individual to the state, to make tangible that power that manages a life. Upon being born or resuscitated against our will, the state has the audacity to say, I am giving you your life. I am giving you back your life. Still to this day, my mother would not call remission anything except the absence of tumor. No talk of gratitude or religiosity, though I speak of appreciation all the time, giving thanks for fresh cooked fish on the table, giving thanks she did not die. And a preposterous theory to my family, after we had all contracted a cold from one another, I was remembered as having said that any family that did not get sick together must not have loved each other quite as much. An article in The Economist entitled Chinese Sneezes, which speculates about the growing dominance of Chinese financial markets over the US, is published alongside the popularized image of an East Asian person in a surgical mask, the image of protection against contagion, which harkened back to the 2002 SARS outbreak, persists as an ever-present reminder of how disease and the people can be locked in the same imaginary configuration, as if the disease is and was a people. As it came to be upon the arrival of COVID-19, with a chance to correct himself, US President Trump insisted upon his public usage of the term Chinese virus instead of its scientifically recognized name. Because it came from China, he said, and then flimsily, excuse me 1 second. When given the chance to correct himself, US President Trump insisted upon his public usage of the term Chinese virus instead of a scientifically recognized name. Because it came from China, he said, and then flimsily, it is not racist at all. Although the mass proliferated, becoming a matter of everyday life, the association between survival of oneself and hatred for an entire people became unnecessarily bound. Even when I am angry with my mother, I still miss the pale vibrancy of her face. In her fury, too, I long to see what red terrain endures, if only to know what lies ahead for me. In metastasis, the cancerous cell has proliferated and invades tissue and other neighboring bodies, organs that touch, the blood through rapid circulation. At its strongest, the cancerous cell can penetrate through the body's barriers. So much can be said of the contained body, and yet the foulest cell can topple its pristine order. In various treatments, the goal of eradicating every malignant cell is an attempt to halt that spread, to expel it, to leave the body intact and without memory of it ever being there. According to Teresa Brennan, the condition of late capitalism has produced an affective access where there's too much affective stuff to dispose of, too much that is directed away from the self with no place to go. The sanctity of the body as a contained form is no longer useful in the political demands of our time. In trying to articulate a feeling, it has already passed. Conclusive statements. What my father had was stage 4 pancreatic cancer, discovered at the very late stage of its development. Confused for an ulcer, he had put it off, thinking it was his body's knotted revenge for years of abuse. He had survived arrest once, caught in the waters while swimming to Hong Kong, where he had hoped to board a plane with his sister to the US. On a subway platform late one night, on the way home from work, he was mugged and stabbed in the stomach with a pocket knife. That too, he survived. It came as no surprise then that the earliest signs would register as anything but its awful truth. How the proliferation of the years can wear on a body. Unraveling towards the end of his life, he began to look like the assemblage of his many parts. He was very much afraid. And collecting it, I knew was a strange biology that willed its way across several histories without subjecthood or nation. And this, the lone cancerous cell glows the way the busiest terminal of a city fills with people the hour of its utmost vitality. And I will end by reading a passage from Audre Lorde's Uses of the Erotic. The very word erotic comes from the Greek word eros, the personification of love in all its aspects, born of chaos and personifying creative power and harmony. When I speak of the erotic, then I speak of it as an exertion of the life force of women, of that creative energy empowered, the knowledge and use of which we are now reclaiming in our language, our history, our dancing, our loving, our work, our lives. Thank you so much to everyone for coming today. And I turn this back to Greg and Donnie to conclude.
Thank you so much, Muriel. And thank you to all the readers for such a lovely, intimate evening. I put the link in for Muriel's book, which is 25% off on the Bureau's website. And thank you for putting in that link, Muriel. And we have a couple of events coming up before Pride Sunday. And on Pride Sunday, I hope we'll see you at the Reclaim Pride Coalition Queer Liberation March, which is taking place at, I think we're meeting at 2:30 at Bryant Bryant Park, and then taking off at 3, marching down 7th Avenue. So please join us if you're in New York. We hope to see you there. And we look forward to the day when we can host you again in person in our store. Until then, we send you much love. Night, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Muriel. That was amazing. It was amazing.